Good morning. It's self-care time. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to Emosciousness video number 4. I'm Ellie, and today what I wanted to focus on was on reminding us what the definition of emotion is and talking a little bit and sharing with you a little bit about where emotions come from, how do they happen, and so as that we can identify exactly where can we step in to take care of ourselves and our emotions and our mindsets. And then to make a little bit of a difference between an emotion, a feeling, and a mood, and then a character trait. Okay? So here we go. For the purpose of these videos, I've chosen one of my favorite emotion definitions to share with you, which is that emotion is energy in motion, quite simply. Now, how does an emotion come to be inside us? Step one is there has to be a trigger. And this trigger can be external, experienced through the senses, or internal, when we decide to have a thought of our own. When this trigger is experienced, the brain goes to look for meaning. And how does it do so? Well, it takes the trigger and it goes and tries to match it unconsciously to all our beliefs, our past experiences, our patterns, images that we have stored. And once it's found it, it sends chemicals, the brain sends chemicals into the body. So the body is flooded with chemicals, and at this point, we're still on the unconscious level. The body then returns through a feedback loop information back to the brain. At this point, the emotion becomes conscious because we've now had a chemical trigger that's given us a sensation. That sensation has been somehow fed back with information to the brain, and we're now aware and conscious of how we're feeling. Now, let's just take a look at those first two, those three steps. Between the trigger being existing and it being recognized, it takes 1/4 of a second. And then it takes another 1/4 of a second for the chemicals to be flooded into our body and the information to come back into the brain, at which point it becomes a conscious emotion. If you think of the speed with which that happens, it is crucial to save our life if we are in a life-threatening situation. However, if our reaction comes immediately after that emotion becomes alive in us and conscious, during a dialogue or in a relationship, it can be pretty detrimental. So there are areas which we can identify in which we can step in and take care of ourselves and make sure that when we respond, especially in relationships or in a dialogue or in communicating with others, in such a way as to foster, nurture the relationship and ourselves at the same time. So taking a look at that process again, where are the places where we can intervene consciously? So we talked about there being a trigger, and that trigger goes to look for a meaning in our brain based on our beliefs and past experiences. So this is one deep set type of work that we can do. And if we use the metaphor of the garden in this case, we would call it the unweeding. So really finding beliefs and stories that we tell ourselves and patterns that we have which don't serve us anymore and removing them. That's the first place we can intervene, or strengthening the ones that do serve us, like understanding what our values are, or understanding where our strengths lie. The second part lies in this, what we call in emotional intelligence, the refractory period, which is this period between which you become aware of your emotion and then you act. Okay? So by practicing mindfulness or meditation or just being consciously aware of what's my body experiencing, we give ourselves the possibility to, back to the garden metaphor, simply observe the garden. Just notice what your emotions are, notice what your thought processes are, notice what meaning you've given to something. So in so doing, or even just using your breath at that point, in so doing, you are creating some space between the meaning and the emotion that you're feeling and your response. How does this put you in a good place? Well, you get to choose. And in the third place, in the third part of the metaphor, which is the one of planting seeds and growing flowers, this is a part where we really take care of our bodies, our sleep, and our emotions just simply through gratitude, forgiveness, positivity on a day-to-day basis. So we are more resilient to our own emotions and feelings, and we can be more aware of where we're at and have more choice. We can actually, if we set intentions for ourselves every day, we can have more choice and be more purposeful in the way we respond to the world. So those are the three areas. The one of the deep diving into our beliefs and letting go of the ones that don't serve us. Learning how to create a space between the emotion that's being experienced and the response or reaction, and choosing that response. And the third one is just to simply constantly be taking care of our emotional needs and ourselves and our mindsets by making sure we get enough sleep, nurturing ourselves, and thinking positively and taking in the good, or consciously cultivating the positive, as we spoke about in video number 2. So let's give a concrete example. Imagine step 1, trigger. I'm walking and I see a black cat cross the road. My mind will go and look for a meaning. And if I was brought up in an environment that is superstitious, the first thing will be like, that's a cat, it's black, that equals bad luck. So my emotion, my body will be flooded based on that meaning with chemicals of anxiety, or at least of some sort of distress. And I will react accordingly. Avoid the bad luck. So move away or think, oh my goodness, whatever it is, that is the immediate action reaction. In a second scenario, and this is a scenario that we can choose to have if we clean up our beliefs, I might have grown up in a household where a cat is simply my best buddy, and I may be comfortable with cats. So I see a black cat crossing the streets. I have not been exposed to any superstitious thoughts. And therefore I think of the cat simply as something cute to cuddle. So I might go towards it and want to touch it and want to say hello. And I will not be flooded with thoughts of how do I avoid bad luck. I will simply be perhaps feeling warm or indifferent. And this is the power of looking at our beliefs and our belief systems and our thought patterns in order to clean them out and unweed them. The other thing is, once I get to noticing that I'm feeling anxious or thinking about bad luck, to create a space between actually moving away from the cat and rationalizing, breathing in and saying, okay, is this reality? Do I really need to? And saying, okay, for the sake of today, I'm going to give myself peace of mind and think it's just a cat crossing the road and there is no such thing as bad luck linked to it. And that is taking care of myself. I am choosing how to respond to this. And then I get on to the action, which is to just get on with my day. So those are the 3 parts, right, of the process of having an emotion. Now, what's the difference between an emotion, a feeling, and a mood or a character trait? An emotion is, as we said, energy and motion. They are very short-lived. And what happens is, as soon as we have an emotion and it becomes conscious, we start having thoughts and logic steps in to create a context. At which point the energy moves, the motion of the energy moves, and other energies come in. So we start to have feelings. And feelings can last for a few seconds or minutes or even hours. And they are linked to a context. They are very specifically linked to a context. Now, once the feelings start becoming a day, hours or days, that is called a mood. And a mood can be influenced by lighting, by the people around us, by our environment that we live in, by the food we eat, and by how much sleep we get, amongst other things. And so, taking care of our environment, how we nurture ourselves, how much we're sleeping, and the people we hang out with is an important part of making sure that energy keeps being in motion. There is a flow, that feelings happen and we can live with them, and they don't turn into something that has us rather than us having the emotions. When feelings are uncatered for, undealt with, or suppressed, they can turn into moods. And if we look at it from a negative perspective, this is what happens when people are diagnosed as depressed or anxious, or have anxiety disorders, or other such disorders that mean that a mood has now become part of their, or anger. When you send somebody to anger management because they have angry tendencies, that's because these moods have been left uncatered for, and therefore they have not been allowed to flow through. So, taking care of our well being from a perspective of unweeding old beliefs that don't help, remembering to be conscious of how we want to respond by simply checking in with our body, checking in with our emotions, voicing it, and saying, how do I want to respond consciously to this situation? And then, how do I take care of myself on a day to day basis through nurturing, hanging out with the right people, having the right environment, the right lighting, and the right amount of sleep? How all these things actually unweed, allow us to observe, and then allow us to respond and to actually cultivate positive mindsets. That's all for today. In the next videos, we will be talking about individual specific emotions. And the next one will be sadness. So we will be talking about how to harness the gifts of sadness, how to allow sadness to flow so that it doesn't get stuck and doesn't take a hold of us, and many more magical things about sadness and what it's capable of doing for relationships and our own understanding of ourselves. So I look forward to that. I wish you a great weekend and take very good care of yourselves. Bye.